Okay. So, hi, my name is Angelo Lopez. I'm a political cartoonist for the Philippine News Today, a Filipino American community newspaper in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I'm here talking with Eric Garcia, a political cartoonist, a printmaker, muralist, all around fine artist. And you're also are you the Roswell Artist in Residence program right now?
I am. I
Oh,
am.
okay, okay. So, and he's also an all-around nice guy. So, so you have, talking to you right now. I know that you have a book out right now, and you're also in an exhibition at the Roswell Museum. Could you tell me about both?
The book came out a couple years ago, and I didn't really get to fully tout about it because of the pandemic and everything kind of slowed everything down. But yeah, it came out about almost over 2 years ago. Ohio State Press published it, and it's about 11 years worth of. I picked the 10 best cartoons of each year for the past 10 or 11 years, and I condensed them into this compilation of into this one book. So that's what's basically in that book. And then currently I'm in the Roswell Artist in Residence program, which is a year-long residency here in Roswell, New Mexico. And it's a very unique residency because it's such a long period. It's a whole year, and they allow you to bring your whole families with you. So I'm here with my wife and my 1-year-old, and we're here chasing aliens.
I actually didn't realize that because, yeah, when I think of Roswell, I think of, that secret hangar and stuff. I mean, what's it like there?
It's a small little town. It's in the eastern part of New Mexico, so we're really close to Texas. Actually, a bit too close to Texas.
Oh,
And the town is basically the industry, the tourism industry is all revolves around the Roswell incident that happened supposedly in 1947. So there's an alien museum. There's the annual alien convention. There's a lot of alien boutiques and stores like that. But aside from that, a lot of people don't know that Roswell houses two of the best art museums in New Mexico. There's the Roswell Museum, and then there's the Anderson Museum. And the Andersons was a really wealthy family who also were in the arts, were artists themselves, and they created this artist residency to bring artists to them instead of them having to venture out to New York or where have you. So for the past over, I think, 60 years, this residency has been going on, and every 3 months, 2 new artists come in and 2 artists leave.
oh, that's so cool and stuff. So there's no pressure to like put aliens in your art or anything.
There isn't. They allow you a lot of freedom to do whatever you want here, and I guess ironically, or maybe not so much, my last exhibition that's up right now at the Roswell Museum has to do with aliens, but it takes a different look on this term. It's a different perspective of understanding who is an alien. So if we take this same term and we use it in an indigenous perspective, then the first alien abduction happened in 1492.
Yeah.
The real alien invasion happened when Hernan Cortez set foot in Mexico. You know what I'm saying? This is what my exhibition is about. It's taking a sci-fi sarcastic twist on the term alien and using it in the context of colonization.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things I love about your art and stuff because it offers that sort of different perspective and stuff. And I'm wondering, both you and I, one of the things I like that has influenced me in finding you is both of us, we do cartoons for our specific community. You do yours for Hispanic American community. I do mine for a Filipino American community. Do you feel a responsibility to that, or?
There's a big responsibility because there's so few of us. There's so few of us that are in this industry, creating hopefully important information that's going to be distributed out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a responsibility for us to make sure that that are historical accounts, that are political information, or relevant news that we're putting out there is correct, because we don't want to put out there false information. We're not trying to tell lies. We're not trying to, you know, mislead people, but we're trying to inform people, and there's a big responsibility in that. And we're trying to help our community, and there's often times when people are trying to help, but they use false or wrong information that actually hinders the community you're trying to help. So there's a big responsibility of getting your information correct and using it properly.
Yeah, yeah. I know with the Filipino American community, not many people know us. So, you know, so I think partly for me, it's just telling people just about the Filipino American community and specific issues involving them. But I know with the Hispanic community, there's been a huge history of like stereotypes and racism that you have to, is that a part of it? Is just offering you know, as you know, authentic Hispanic perspective instead of, and breaking through those stereotypes.
Yeah, it's breaking through the stereotypes of who people think that we are, or putting us in a box.
Yeah,
and making us. I'm trying to make people aware that we're more complex than what people assume or have placed the label upon us. And even within my own community of Chicano, Latino, Hispano, you know, that we have our own perceived notions about ourselves.
yeah.
So even trying to break from that and give new perspectives on our complex identity, you know, it's a difficult task.
Yeah, yeah. I know with Filipino Americans, a lot of Filipino Americans don't know our own history of Filipinos in America. The labor movement, especially, and stuff. And I try to do that in my cartoons. I was actually influenced by you and stuff. You put a lot of history in your cartoons, and I thought, that's a great idea. I should do that too.
Well, history is important. If we don't know the past, then we can't make sense of what's happening at the present. And then if we don't understand what's happening in the present, we can't move forward. So history is so important to put everything in perspective of why things are the way they are. And to call out the irony of what's happened in the past and what's happening now. It's super important to know where you've come from, where to make sense of where we're at and where we can go from here.
Yeah. I'm curious. What do you think of the critical race theory? I don't know the right word, scandal or issue right now.
It's so bizarre that people are outraged about learning history, because that's basically what it is. You could put this fancy label, critical race theory on top of it, but it's basically learning facts of things that happened in the past. And the United States is scared of the past. The United States is scared of its past because there's so many skeletons within it.
Yeah.
People do not want to remember. People don't want to realize that there's a genocide that happened here in the Americas. People do not want to acknowledge that their ancestors were slavers at one point. People don't want to acknowledge that there was people prior to Europeans living here.
Yeah.
And once you erase all of those facts, once you discard that history, then it's a blank slate. Then you can fill it with all kinds of beautiful rose-colored images of your history, and don't have to be ashamed of it, and don't have to be forced to reckon with it. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who do not want to reckon with the past, who do not want to feel blamed for their ancestors, and like, this is a good example. My ancestry, I'm a Chicano, so I'm a mestizo, I'm a mixture. I come from Spanish ancestry, but I also come from indigenous ancestors here in the Americas. My Spanish conquistador ancestors were bloody mercenaries who came out here to rape and pillage in the Americas. But I understand that history and I reckon with it and I accept it. And now I have to be able to move on and move forward and acknowledge the past, understand it completely, understand that my ancestor did something bad, and now I can do something good by knowing that. Now I can reckon with it and understand that my brothers and sisters who are indigenous people are my brothers and sisters, and they deserve a reckoning for my ancestors' misdeeds. So I think, you know, if white people understood this in the United States, I think there would be a lot more acceptance. There would be a lot more peace. There would be a lot more justice throughout the country if people would just come to terms with the skeletons in our closet.
Yeah, the Philippines is going through a similar thing right now.
I've been hearing all the different electoral candidates coming up in the Philippines.
Bongbong Marcos, the son of
Duterte's. Is it Duterte's daughter? She's
vice presidential candidate, and she'll probably go through. But what's even worse is that Ferdinand Marcos's son.
His son, yes, that's what I was looking for.
And his name is Bongbong Marcos. And one of the reasons why he's leading in the polls is that the younger generations of Filipinos were never taught about how bad martial law was. Right. And so now for the past few years, the Marcos family has been putting a disinformation campaign on social media. And now he's leading the polls by 60% and stuff. Wow. And this is crazy and stuff. And so, so people who survived the martial law period are trying to say, hey, wait a minute. One, they're not admitting to any crimes that were committed. They're not admitting to the torture. They're not admitting to the attacks on the press. They're not admitting to any of that. How they tanked the economy, and there's a term called crony capitalism. It was invented because of them, right? Because of Marcos, and now they're going to elect a son. And for me, this shows just how important history is, right? Everything that you're saying and stuff.
You make a perfect example right there. If you can control people's understanding of the history, then you can whitewash it completely, and the bad things never happened.
Yeah.
And then you could put in place, a son of a dictator, and everything's fine.
Yeah, right. Because of social media, there's a whole bunch of younger Filipinos who thought the Marcos era was a golden age. When he actually, by the time he left, our economy, the Philippine economy was almost as bad as Cambodia, and Cambodia had just gone through the killing fields, right? So, I understand what you're saying about history, because the Philippines is facing the consequences of not learning about history and stuff. So, but I saw a cartoon of yours with this teacher with pink glasses. That is a great cartoon.
That's exactly what we're talking about, right? It's the history teacher giving the rose-colored version of U.S. history, and not teaching the students really anything critical or important and relevant to what really happened. And Philippines is another great example if we want to even look further in history, which was a part of the United States. For a long time during the Spanish-American War, the United States consumed not only Cuba and Puerto Rico, but also the Philippines. And the United States was heavily influential in creating the disparity of the Philippines, and using it as a colonial, punching bag for a long time. And
people didn't realize that the Philippines was fighting against the Spanish so they can become independent.
Right.
And then the Americans came, and we didn't get our independence. It was bad and stuff. But that leads to a point. Both of our communities have a lot of similarities, right? We were former Spanish colonies. We were kind of victims of American imperialism. you know, when we came to America, our workers were exploited for their labor and stuff. And I guess what are issues right now affecting, you know, the Latino community?
Well, I don't think they've changed much since the beginning.
Yeah,
And unfortunately, we keep repeating the same problems since the beginning of colonization. You know, there's a lack of representation of us within the higher ups, and once we do get politicians that look like us, they've already changed so much trying to get into the political system. They become part of it, a part of the problem.
yeah,
You know, continual lack of proper education, a constant disparaging healthcare system, black and brown prisons filled with our people, police violence, the border, constant violence on the border, and you know, it just goes on and on. And these are, you know, we could be talking about the same issues in 1966 and be saying the same words. You know, the problem is things haven't really changed that much.
yeah, yeah. I'm rubbing my head because it's similar for Filipinos and stuff. You know, I have a hard time sometimes because I live in Silicon Valley, so I get a very skewed view at times and stuff. But I know that because Filipino Americans make up a large part of domestic workers, nurses, you know, and those were especially hard hit by the COVID crisis and stuff, because even though like in America, there's 5% of nurses in America are Philippine nurses, and yet a third of the nurses who died of COVID were Filipino nurses, and that's because they tend to be in the more in the parts of the hospital. You know, they're in I guess they take assignments where they're more exposed to COVID, like the critical care units and stuff. And so because they're more exposed, more of them are dying and stuff. So, you know, I'm sure it's similar, you know, with Latino communities and stuff, in terms of where they work and stuff. But yeah, and with domestic workers, and with you know, or especially with you know, caretakers, you know, you know, they work, and yet they don't get caregivers. They don't get a lot of the same protections under the labor laws and stuff. And so there's a fight going on to try to get more protections so they're not sexually harassed. So they don't suffer through wage theft, you know. So it's tough. It's tough. But yeah, I think for me though, when, you know, because Duterte and what he's done, and now Marcos potentially gaining power, a lot of my focus has been sucked up with that and stuff, because I'm just scared. I'm really terrified of what may happen, because we're already in the Philippines, we're already walking towards authoritarianism. You know, I had this fear that if Marcos gets elected, that will seal the deal, right? And stuff. So has Mexico, you know, what's going on there right now? In the Philippines, another thing that's going on is multinational corporations are trying to steal land from indigenous people and stuff. Is that a similar thing going on in Mexico? Or?
Yeah, well, that's a constant struggle in Mexico. You know, the racism in Mexico still runs pretty deep, and the unfortunately, the darker, the more indigenous people get the brunt or the raw deal of it all. And, you know, major corporations are still encroaching on indigenous lands. You know, the farther south, and like the Yucatan or Chiapas and places like that, there's a lot of big different struggles going on with the indigenous, with these mass corporations deforesting the jungles and taking land like that. The one thing that I'm cautious to talk about within Mexico is Mexico. There's so much going on, and I can't keep up with all the politics there.
Yeah.
So a lot of my concentration right now is dealing with the Mexican American Chicano community and things that are happening in the States. So there's so much going on in Mexico. It's such a big country that I can't keep up with it all.
Yeah. I was the same way when Trump came to office. So many crazy things were happening. I got kind of overwhelmed and stuff. I learned from that. Only focus on a few issues at a time, just for the sake of my mental health. I don't know if that was the same with you. But.
Yeah, there was this. Yeah, the Trump administration. I think he put everyone on overdrive. There was just so much coming out of that administration. I think people's political cartoonist hands were about to fall off because they couldn't keep up with everything that was coming out of his orange head.
My hand is still here right now, but kind of barely and stuff. It's a little sore.
Yeah, and we haven't got rid of him yet. He's still out there. Right? He's going to run again, and that's the biggest fear that's gonna come next.
Yeah. Are you scared? I mean, I'm kind of scared at times and stuff when I read the news and because I get kind of scared sometimes when I read it and stuff. So that's why I focus on only a few subjects just to handle my anxieties.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I hope for the best and expect the worst. And so here's my thing. I don't want people to think that I'm a Democrat or something, because I'm not.
Well, no,
I'm not a Republican either.
Yeah,
I'm definitely not a Republican.
Well, one of the things I admire about you is that you criticize Biden as much as you criticize Trump.
Well, that's what. Yes, that's. I think that's what I was leading into. A lot of the policies that Biden has now put forth, they're no different from Trump. He hasn't closed Guantanamo Bay. The border's still on lockdown.
Yeah.
The biggest budget for the Department of Defense ever came about. We're now leading into another war where his policies ain't very drastically different than from Trump. I don't know why the Republicans hate Biden so much. He's done everything for him. He's now opened up the oil fields to pump more oil out of the United States. So I don't understand why he's so hated by Republicans, because he seems to me his policies seem very conservative.
Yeah.
So I'm when you say I'm scared if Trump comes back, I'm scared in general of the United States government.
Yeah.
I'm very critical of what the United States government has done and is doing, and I live within it. It's the unfortunate reality that I live in. So I think I've come to terms with my disgust and my fear, I guess, of what the government is doing and what it's going to change into.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good for you. I know with me, I'm still struggling with it and stuff. I think just because what's happening in the Philippines horrifies me and stuff, as well as America. But yeah. Well, you're also a fine artist, right? You do printmaking, you do murals, you're an artist in residence and stuff. I'm kind of curious. I want to get into printmaking and stuff. How do you like it? No, do you do lithography? Do you do etchings?
It's an assortment of processes. In my undergrad, I studied a lot of printmaking. So I did lithography, I did woodcuts, silk screen, linoleum cuts. So it's a variety of methods. And printmaking is great. I highly recommend it to you. It's the in-between of fine art and still art that's accessible to people, because you're making multiples.
Yeah.
So they're all, no matter ideally the first print versus the last print, they're all supposed to be the same. So no one print is supposed to be worth more than the other. So if you make 10, they're all original pieces of art. And because of the multiple, it gives you an advantage in the fine art world of having being a more democratic piece of art versus a one precious sculpture or one precious oil painting. Now you have, supposedly, you could have as many as you want, but you could have 10, and 10 different people can have one. So they could be in 10 different places at once. You can influence 10 different communities at the same time. They're easier to transport. They're lightweight. It's not carrying around a sculpture or a giant framed painting. They're just pieces of paper. They're cost effective in making. It's a very cheap, easy. Some processes are more complex than other and could be more expensive, but they can be very cheaply made. And then it also breaks the idea of the precious one of a kind object. So in the fine art world, everything is it's unfortunately capitalism consumes all, and the art world, the one precious object is prized value because it's worth more. Yeah. But when you start including multiples into that mix, it kind of breaks that idea of something being precious, and the value goes down, and it makes it more democratic for people to afford. So for all those reasons, the political understandings of political history and the way the prints have been used to disseminate information, I love all that. I love all those aspects to printmaking, and it goes hand in hand with political cartooning as well. I think a lot of famous satirists and political cartoonists dabble in printmaking as well. We talk about like Goya, Guadalupe Posada. It goes hand in hand with what we do. I think the interesting thing that we do is we're making satirical prints, but we're using modern technology to expand our reach. Right, we're put them in newspapers, so they're multiplied in the thousands instead of a very few small edition, or online for an infinite amount of spectators. Yeah. So I think it goes hand in hand. It's a real cool way of creating a fine art object. It can be meditating at times to create them.
Does it smell? I mean, is there like a when you're doing the chemicals and stuff? Is there like a
So lithography has a bunch of chemicals and acids that you use to etch the stones and stuff. If you're using oil inks, they kind of have like a smell to them. It just depends what method, what materials you're using.
Okay. Yeah, you mentioned this earlier, but I was going to ask if because I know that Katie Kolowitz, Posada, a lot of Ben Shahn, a lot of those great political artists use printmaking and stuff. Who are your artist heroes and stuff, and how did they influence you?
Goya is a big influence. I really love Francisco Goya from Spain, and he was a tremendous painter, but he also did tremendous printmaking as well. I think he was ahead of his time in the way he was creating satirical looks of society and wars and what was going on during his time. He was a real inspiration. The Mexican Muralist movement, I've always loved all the Tres Grandes, the Siqueiros, Orozco, Rivera. Who else? Posada, the famous printmaker who also came from Mexico. He was known for making all kinds of different illustrations in newspapers, not only political, but just crazy comics and editorials in the newspaper as well. All those have influenced what I do.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I think one of the things that I've been influenced by is the artist activist. I think both of us have, the artist who uses their art to try to create positive social change.
Right.
Stuff. Yeah. So, of the three, Rivera, Siqueiros, and I forgot the third one. Which one was the most influential to you and stuff? Orozco, were all three of them equally influential?
There's actually another muralist that I love even better than the three. His name is Jorge Camarena, and he was a muralist during the same time period, but he never got the I guess the recognition of the three big ones, los tres grandes. But Jorge Camarena was a real master of his craft, and he did murals all over to international gigs. So look him up, Jorge Camarena. He's a really cool muralist that I often liked, as that didn't get as much. He did a lot of commercial work, so I think that's why they kind of push him to the side. But his stuff is really amazing.
Okay. Oh, okay. I got to check him. I've never heard of him and stuff. So that's basically why. It's just that he did commercial work and that made him lesser respected, I guess. Or?
That's my theory. I could be wrong, but I think that's why.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, but like Rivera, he did stuff for Ford.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Although,
and that was the irony, right? That he was a super communist, and then he was working for a capitalist, and then and eventually, when he went to New York to work for Rockefeller, they got tired of his ass, and he tore his mural down because he had Lenin painted there in the Rockefeller Center.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, Rivera's been my favorite just because I don't know enough Orozco. You get overexposed to Rivera, and where I live in San Francisco, there's three, or the San Francisco Bay Area, there's 3 Diego Rivera murals in San Francisco and stuff. So, it's easy access for me to get. And when you see it, you're just amazed and stuff, I think Orozco, he had a mural that was whitewashed in LA, right? It was and stuff. But what I love about their work is that there's within their work, there's a critique, of economic inequality. There's an uplifting of indigenous people and stuff. And I think it's very much art as an educational thing, where they're trying to teach the people who look at their murals just about history.
Exactly.
It's a similar thing to your cartoons.
Well, when I was in high school, I started working with the youth arts organization. They gave us jobs during the summer, and that's where I learned to paint murals. So I learned murals or creating large scale murals from a guy named Joe Stevenson. He was our mentor, the main muralist during that time. And we had summer gigs. That's what we did during the summer in Albuquerque. But it was during that time when my brother took me to Mexico City for the first time. Yeah. And he showed me Los Tres Grandes. He showed me the impressive murals that they were down there. Excuse me. And I think it was at that point that I understood that murals can be, or art in general, could be more than just pretty paintings. I understood that what the murals were trying to do was something else. It wasn't just art for art's sake. They were telling history. They were talking about contemporary and the past of politics. They were talking about science and education and all the inequalities that were going on during that time. So they were teaching tools. They were made grand scale out in public places for people to learn from. So it really had an impact going down there and seeing those for the first time. And I think from then on, I understood that art can be something other than just something pretty to look at.
Yeah. I have a similar thing with some of the American muralists of the 30s, Thomas R. Benton.
Oh yeah.
What's his name? Ben Shahn. And if you look at their paintings, they're pretty honest about lynchings, about miners suffering from black lung and stuff. Within their, it's ironic that a lot of conservatives like Benton, because if you look at his murals, they're actually very critical of American capitalism and some of the things that were done in history to various groups of people and stuff. Yeah. So but I think because he did things in a more realistic way and stuff. I think realists in general tended to become favorites of conservatives, even though they didn't realize what they were actually doing in their art. So yeah, but yeah. So
who were you looking at when you were growing up? Was there a specific, was Benton someone that you were aware of when you were really young?
When I was young, it was basically, I think both of us, we did a previous talk, comics. and stuff. I loved Peanuts, Charles Schulz Peanuts. And then I got into Marvel Comics and stuff. And they did these reprints of the Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, Fantastic Four. And I love Kirby and stuff. And Steve Ditko's Spider-Man and stuff. So I got into comics. But in college, I discovered Rivera and Benton and stuff. And I think both of those, there really wasn't, I really didn't get exposed much to Orozco and Cisqueros until later, but I got exposed to Ben Shahn. I got exposed to Benton. The library that I went to was mostly American leftist artists of the 30s and stuff. And so that because of the Great Depression, there was a huge shift to the left, right? And those artists were especially influential to me. And I just started, when I started doing political cartoons, I started getting into there was a magazine called The Masses in the early 1900s. It was a socialist magazine. And I got into the cartoons of those political cartoonists, Boardman Robinson, Robert Minor, Art Young. And there's a newspaper called The Catholic Worker. And I love the artist of The Catholic Worker. And it was woodcut. A lot of it was woodcut and stuff. So you might like that. It was Fritz Eichenberg.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Ade Bethune. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right and stuff, but both of the artist and the Catholic Worker. I'm happy you know them because every time I mention their names, nobody knows what I'm talking about. But they did these kind of very woodcuttish, very graphic work and stuff, and I just love their stuff. So those are my big influences and stuff. And I love your art and stuff because your art kind of has that sort of, I can tell the printmaking influence on your work and stuff. And so I'm trying to incorporate that into my stuff too and stuff, because I think when I compare your art, your cartoons to mine, your cartoons are a lot more hard hitting and stuff. Where mine, I critique stuff, but I'm a little more soft and stuff. So, I don't know if that's good or I think it's just my personality and stuff. Is that my cartoons are just a little softer and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like attacking certain things and stuff. So, if you look at my stuff compared to yours or to like any of those alternative cartoonists, Ted Rall or I'm just I'm kind of mild compared to theirs. So
I'm sure that if we were to, I would really would like to I'd like to know what the conservative right in the Philippines thinks about your cartoons.
Oh, they probably hate it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they consider it soft at all.
Yeah. But you guys go for the juggler and stuff. I don't really go for the juggler in my cartoons. I just state the facts. What? The Lumad, these indigenous people, they're getting exploited by the multinational corporations and stuff. And I'll leave it at that. Mm-hmm. Or, what? Filipino Americans have had a history of being exploited, working the farms, or working in the canneries in Alaska, and I'll leave it at that. So I do a lot of research in my cartoons and stuff, but when I look at your cartoons and stuff, say, wow, that good for you for going for that. But I don't go for the jugglers. I just, I always feel like with my cartoons, these are the facts. This is an exploitative system. We still face racism.
Well, they're different strategies. I think sometimes, a soft cartoon that's stating a fact can get more traction than something that scares you, like something like I would, No,
your cartoons
like sometimes they won't even like to look at my cartoon, but yours actually would bring someone in and they would become aware of an issue.
Yeah.
So I think there are different strategies there.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't try to be funny in my cartoons. I think that's the one thing, I really want to say this is an issue, and
Mhm.
you know, um, I listened to a cartoonist say he wasn't he's not really trying to persuade people with his cartoons. I kind of am.
Mhm.
I want people to look at my cartoons and to say, you know what, like I'm doing a lot of cartoons attacking Marcos and stuff. So I'm bringing history of what Marcos did and the people who resisted
Mhm.
Marcos's martial law period and stuff,
Yeah.
the human rights abuses. I agree with you. History is important and stuff, but if people are not being taught about it and stuff, I kind of want to use some of my cartoons to teach history, right? And it's hard to be funny about something like extrajudicial killings. It's hard to be funny about something like, indigenous people are getting their land stolen and stuff. It's hard to be funny about, you know, the government is accusing people of being communists and killing them. There really is no humor in that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm stating, my cartoons, I'm saying this we can't overlook this and stuff. So, um, and I think you do the same thing and stuff. I think that's why, in many ways, our cartoons are very similar and stuff. Even though I think your stuff is very um, bold, black and whites. Where mine, there's a lot of probably too much cross hatching. But I always think like you don't wear glasses. I have a feeling your eyesight is still pretty good.
I do wear glasses to see far, but to up close, I'm fine.
Yeah,
Um,
I think my cross hatching has ruined my eyesight because I'm pretty.
no, but I've always admired your style. And I remember when I finally met you, I had that was one of my questions. Like, how are you getting that look?
Oh,
How are you getting those gradations in your tones of
yeah.
and in your shadows and your shading? And
I,
you showed me it was you're using like a paper but with a crayon to give like
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I was I'm very old school. So like the pen and ink style, the cross hatching. If you look at the children's book illustrators, like the guy who did Charlotte's Web,
Mhm.
Garth Williams, or the guy who did what's that one? Alice in Wonderland, John
Yeah.
Tenniel. I love that cross hatching, but it kills. I want to read the biography and see if they went blind. Doing all that cross hatching. you know, But I also, if you look in those the leftist cartoonists, like in the masses that I was talking
Mhm.
about,
Mhm.
Art Young, Boardman Robinson, Robert Miner, and there was a cartoonist for the St. Louis, some St. Louis paper, Daniel Fitzpatrick.
Mhm.
They use this kind of black crayon. I forgot what it's called. It's where after they ink it, to put the shadows, they put that kind of crayon on, and I
Mhm.
just love that effect and stuff. It looks kind, Daumier and stuff.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it looks kind of. I love Daumier too and stuff. So so what I'm really doing is old fashioned and stuff. It's not new.
Well, it's a beautiful technique. I've always admired the way you can do with it. I recently, speaking of process, I've stopped using ink and paper.
Oh,
Since my kid was born, I've been struggling to keep up with my cartoons. So I had to think of a faster way to make cartoons. So I bought an iPad and I've been using the Procreate. So
okay.
so for the past 2 years, I've been doing pure digital.
Do you like it?
I do. It cuts out 5 steps of inking, drawing, scanning, and then playing with it on Photoshop. It skips all those steps, and I just straight into the digital realm, and then I could send it off. So it's been helping me extremely to get things done. I do miss the actual tactile feel of drawing on a piece of paper, but it helps me get things done. Have you tried it? Have you tried using these?
No, but I have a friend. She's doing a graphic novel. She does Procreate and stuff.
Yeah.
I want to do a children's book too. So I'm in a
Yeah.
critique group and stuff. And my friend in the critique group, she's and actually in 2 years she's going to be released. She's found a publisher. She's the first person in our group to find a publisher. So she's doing she's doing an autobiographical graphic novel. And I was thinking I've always wanted to try out graphic novels, but now that I see how hard it is and how arduous it is, because hers is like a 200-page one and stuff, and I'm thinking,
that's a lot of work.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. It's not because when we do our stuff, it's just one panel, right? Hers, how many panels per page? 5 or 6, and then times that by 200.
Yeah,
she's got a ton, and she has to keep the flow of the story going, pace it right so that the conflict of the story reaches a climax and stuff, and all of that stuff that she has to build up character to make sure that all the characters play an important role in the story and stuff. And when I watch her, I admire her, but I keep thinking, man, that is a ton of work.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So I still want to do a graphic novel, but I'm thinking short stories. Maybe Robert Crumb, he does like 5-page short stories and stuff.
Yep.
I kind of want to do them because that seems when I think of what she's doing, I think I don't know if I have the storytelling skills to do that and stuff. But have you thought about graphic novels or?
Not so much graphic novels, but I dabble in comics as well. I dabble in sequential art, making longer form comic book stories. Yeah, so I've done a few, and it's very time consuming. I wish I had time to make more.
Oh, okay.
And I'm always admired of people who can make such grand stories using the comic form, because there's so much that goes into it. It's not only drawing a comic, you're writing the story, you're putting in all the text, God forbid you even try to put color in there, you have to color everything. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah, she's putting color in her work, and I'm thinking, oh man. Yeah, but I'm curious though. One of the things I have a theory and stuff, as newspapers are dying out, stuff, every time I go to one of these political cartoonist conventions, people are always worried about losing their jobs and stuff. Do you think the future of political cartoons will be in graphic novels and stuff? Because if every I've been to like 4 or 5 conventions, and that's always the talk, is that they're worried about losing their jobs and stuff. And it seems like cartoonists from other countries seem to have bigger influence than cartoonists and political cartoonists in other countries. They're getting jailed, they're getting harassed. They're all of this stuff is. Whereas in here, I think we get hate mail, but a lot of this stuff is just they're just worried about losing their jobs because their newspapers are struggling. Yeah. Do you think, financially speaking, you think the future of because Mouse, Persepolis, all of those great they're political graphic novels.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 questions there. One of your questions I'm trying to understand is are political cartoonists eventually just going to evolve into graphic novelists?
Yeah. I'm wondering.
So I guess your first part of your question is there's still going to be a profession of political cartoonists in the future, and I don't see political cartoonists going away, even though I do see the jobs going away. I don't think if you're a young person wanting to be a political cartoonist, it's not a career anymore. Those jobs don't exist. Newspapers do not hire political cartoonists anymore. They might buy a political cartoon and use it in some form or fashion in their newspaper, but it's not a paid profession. It's not a position that you would acquire by a sole newspaper. Those jobs are far and few anymore. They don't exist anymore. We're both part of the American.
I forget the name of American Association.
American Association of Political
something.
And I'm surprised, when I every so often I put up a new cartoon on the website, and there's plenty of political cartoonists out there that are publishing, that are putting cartoons up, and they're all over the United States. It's not like, I don't think there's fewer of them. I just think they're in different formats, or they're using different formats to publish. Now online, there's so many different platforms where you can publish.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be tied to a specific paper or a specific news outlet.
Yeah.
So I think I think political cartoonists are savvy and sly enough to still continue to do what they normally do, but in a different way.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a paid position at the New York Times.
Yeah.
It's going to be an alternative way that you can outsource your cartoons into different media outlets. Will political cartoonists evolve and start doing longer form sequential art to graphic novels? I think that's a big reach, because I think there's old school political cartoonists who only understand the one frame cartoon and don't understand the complexity of doing multiple long sequential art form. I think, this is my opinion, I think those are two drastically different processes.
Yeah.
And I think cartoonists who work in comic books completely understand the long form and what it takes to make longer stories, and political cartoonists are solely set in that one frame, and and they're trying to put all the information in that one frame. Yeah. And I'm not saying there isn't people that dabble in between, because there is. I think I try to dabble in between.
Yeah.
But I think they're separate communities, and I don't think the political cartoonists are going to evolve into the long form graphic novelists. I don't think that's true. I do think graphic novelists can be considered political cartoonists.
Yeah, yeah.
That are working in a different format, in the long sequential format of the comic book. I would grant them the title of a political cartoonist, working in long form.
Yeah.
But do you know what I'm saying? I think the political cartoonists, as we know, who work in sequential in one frame versus the comic book, they're two different communities.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think you gave a very thoughtful and good answer, because I just haven't thought it through and stuff. Mm-hmm. I know with me, when I've tried to do multi-panel cartoons, I struggle with dialogue. My dialogue is very clunky and stuff, and I always kind of wish Stan Lee was around. He could do my dialogue, but just make sure he gives me credit for my work, right? And make sure I get my royalties instead of just.
Well, here's another aspect to that as well. I don't think so. In making a comic book, a lot of those comic books are made in teams with multiple people working together, because they're very complicated pieces of art, right? You have the person that writes it, you have the person that illustrates it, you have the person that inks it, the person that colors it, the person that just puts in the lettering. So, for some comic books, they're a team of like 5 or 6 people working together.
Yeah. And
for a political cartoonist to try to switch in and do all that work, it's a task, and I don't think it's possible for some political cartoonists to transition into such a big endeavor, even though some do.
Okay, yeah. I'm thinking of it, but just watching my friend do her graphic novel, I keep thinking, gosh, she is switched refined the dialogue to make it more succinct, and all of this stuff that I've never really encountered before and stuff. So I think you're right and stuff. To me, it's intimidating and stuff, but I'm willing to give it. It's just, you'll be reading a lot of short stories with bad dialogue once my graphic novel is finished.
I'm not saying this to sound super negative. I think it's possible, and I encourage you to go for it. I would love to see what you can do in long format, you know. So
I actually would. I would love to see what I would do in long format too.
And now that you're retired, you have the time. That's the beauty of retirement.
Well, you know, one of the things about, you know, you were saying like when I tended to bond with people who have a full-time job and do their political cartoons on the side.
Yeah.
I think part of it, I was just too intimidated to really, you know, to be, I was just too nervous being around those full-time cartoonists because I kept thinking, you know, wow, Lisa and I, we went to the Washington Post and we got a tour. You know, I just won an award or something, and we saw the office of Tom Tolles, right? And I thought, man, this is Tom Tolles' office and stuff. And I wanted Lisa to distract the person who was giving us a tour, so I could go into his office and steal like a pencil or an eraser. And I could just, this is Tom Tolles' pencil. He wasn't in the office and stuff, but I was just, you know, the idea of having an office as a cartoonist just kind of blew my mind, right? Stuff. Yeah. So I kind of, you know, Lisa couldn't figure out from my body language that I wanted him to but it was cool though. It was cool to see it and stuff. But he's retired now, right?
Well, is his position now free?
You know, I don't know. I haven't.
Are they gonna refill that position? That's that we go back to that same question. You know, once the older political cartoonists are retiring, or you know, are no longer with us, are those positions now free for a younger generation to fill, or are they just discontinued and are now filling with piecemeal cartoons from online?
You know, I really don't know, but it would be sad if because I mean, this is her block. You know, was with the Washington Post cartoonists and stuff. So if the Washington Post doesn't hire a new, I don't really know. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But if they didn't hire anybody to replace Tom Tolles and stuff, then you know things are screwed. You know, so, you know, because like this was the office that Herblock used to. I mean, and Herblock was a great cartoonist.
Oh yeah. Well, if anyone could afford a political cartoonist, you would think one of the biggest nationally known papers could hire.
The Washington Post, right? But you know, the New York Times doesn't have an editorial cartoonist stuff.
So that's what I'm saying. If any other minor paper in a smaller city is most definitely not going to have a political cartoonist on staff.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you have any last words on like your thoughts on like maybe the future of editorial cartoon, or do you think it's, as you said, it's just going to evolve into something that people who don't earn a living, I guess, but they can just do it out of the love of the craft.
Yeah, if there's any youth that always ask me about becoming a political cartoonist, I always tell them, you're not going to do it for money. That's for sure. You have to do it because you either love drawing politics, or you have a passion for getting out information in a visual form. You know, it's not going to be a way to make a living. You have to have a passion about creating images that make a difference in their society. And unfortunately, you know, I think that's the way it's going for political cartooning. Even though I think it is a format it's very important right now because of people's short attention span. I think our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, especially with our smartphones, and we can swipe and see different images. If you ever just get lost in Instagram, just swiping, you're just looking at it for only 2 seconds and then you swipe away. Political cartoons, they have an advantage of giving a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're still relevant. I think that's why our cartoons are still being used and are still active today.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. You know, there's one last thing. You know, I know that you just I looked in your Facebook page and you just did a group animation collaboration and stuff. Would you like to, you know, just talk about it, just to let people know and what's the exhibition about?
So for the past couple of years, I've been dabbling in animation and ever since I was small, I wanted to make cartoons. I think that was one of the first jobs I wanted to have is like Sunday morning cartoons. I said, oh, what I want to do when I grow up is make cartoons.
Yeah.
And
yeah, here in California, it was Saturday morning, but you know.
yeah, Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
So now I have friends that are animators who are professional animators. So I've been fortunate enough to collaborate with them.
Okay.
And giving them visuals, giving them the context, and then having them create the movement, having them making the visuals come alive. So one collaborator that I've been working with is a friend of mine, Luis Mayorga, who works for like a fancy animation studio in Chicago. So I would give him my characters like Uncle Sam or something like a fat cat or something like that, and then he'll be able to animate it for me. So it's somewhat like a moving political cartoon that we're trying to dabble in.
Okay, where can you find it?
So right now there's an exhibition in I'm blanking on the college. It's a college out of LA. I'll have to find it and send it to you. But there's an exhibition right now that's hosting different animations from artists.
Yeah.
And so that's happening right now. But if you go to my my webpage, you'll be able to find. If you go to ericgarcia.com, I think you'll be able to find some of my animations that I've worked on in the past.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think this will be the end so that you can get back to your son. And, you know, but thank you very much. And I appreciate you being able to talk to me and stuff. So thank you very much.